And welcome back to the Livingston Parish News Weekly Show, a podcast brought to you by the Livingston Parish News. My name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. We appreciate you joining us today. Campaign season is underway, and we are kicking it off with this gentleman here. We are going to let him introduce himself before we get into the meat of his interview. Good morning, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, McHugh. My name is Jeff Wiley. I am a resident of Ascension Parish and a resident of District 81. House Legislative District, and I'm running for the District 81 State Representative position, which will, at the end of this term, currently held by Clay Shakespeare, who is term limited, and I'm offering myself for election come October.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And of course, Representative Scheck-Snyder, currently Speaker of the House, so some big shoes to fill.
Yes.
So first, let's get in on you. You are a former law enforcement officer, or current? Are you current?
No, sir.
Former?
No. All my life, all my professional life, finished school at Southeastern. I was going to be a teacher and a coach, and I realized how God leads you in different ways, and so I found myself in law enforcement right after graduation. Well, a stint in the Marine Corps as a military policeman, maybe that was part of the divine intervention, okay? And then went to work in law enforcement. In my mind, it was a temporary thing until I found that coaching job and that teaching job. It's all I ever wanted to do as a young kid and a young adult. And then I realized along the way as I moved up the ladder of management, supervision, that I was a good leader as a teacher and a coach.
Sure.
And I'm so ended up, as God would will it, in 1995, I got elected, and 6 terms later, retired 4 years ago in January. One of the greatest days of my life. Well, retirement was part of it, but also it coincided to the day when our youngest daughter, Erin, was sworn in as a judge in Ascension Parish, and that was a commitment I made along the way. Some people would say logical, which was that it wasn't going to go far with me being the sheriff and her presiding over many of the cases that my deputies made cases on, right?
Sure, would be sending her away.
Yeah, so that's the 4 years that I've been, what do you say, dormant? Yes. Right.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
And you answered the question I was going to follow up with. You said you were elected. You were elected sheriff in Ascension Parish. So obviously you brought that to an end as sort of a, passing of the torch to your daughter, who was still technically part of the justice system. I don't even want to say technically, obviously part of the justice system.
Right.
But during your time as sheriff, what was your focus? I would imagine that it was to be a teacher, be a leader.
Yes, but we had to talk about a tail, and we kind of knew it. It was when I took office, we were right on the front end of what we felt, and it ended up prevailing to be an obvious run on unprecedented growth. And it was. And so our parish, arguably Livingston, top 2 fastest growing parishes in the state of Louisiana for the last quarter century. And so what did we have to do? We had to grow personnel, call, load, equipment, assets were failing, finances were really, really challenging. Demand, I used to say this, a new type of crime was encroaching upon sleepy old Ascension, and a new type of criminal. So we really had to rise up to that level. Jail expansion issues, just a litany of things that a sheriff is responsible for. Now, I had been the chief deputy for 8 years before that, so I wasn't flying blind. But big difference in being number 2 and number 1. You can relate to that.
Yes.
To some extent. So yeah, hit the ground running, and our motto was: "The day we say the same is the day we're losing ground in the growth of Ascension Parish, and particularly in the enormity of being a sheriff during that period."
Now that's an interesting phrase. I've never heard. I mean, I have heard it uttered, just never in that way, right? So the minute you stop, somebody else is after you.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So, but you said it in a different way. How did that affect how you ran your department?
Well, it was look, I inherited it. I succeeded a lifelong public servant as well, World War II era sheriff. His name was Harold Tridico, a wonderful, decent man. big demand to not reform, but to improve and to introduce this department to the 20th and 21st century, right? And so there was a lot of vacuum there. And I'm not a techie guy, but I'm smart enough to have surrounded myself with that new breed of young man and woman, the professional law enforcement person. And we pushed ourselves forward with a lot of the more sophisticated aspects of the law enforcement side. And understand a Louisiana sheriff is also responsible for tax collection, for civil processing, and a lot of the real less sensational things, but obviously makes the world go round, as well as the public safety side of it.
Sure, a very important due process, and you're involved in a lot of that. And so you're running for state representative, and you have been a sheriff in the district that you're in which you're running for quite some time. Mm-hmm. And how did your time as, you know what, I'm going to ask you this question first. Why are you running?
Simple. 4 years I've been retired. Into the beginning of the second year, a certain thing called the quarantine came up, and that kind of just eliminated my mind from wandering to, okay, what sense of purpose are you going to find next besides being a real good pawpaw, which I'm my proudest occupation.
Sure.
Right? And then more and more, I was feeling on my heart. All my adult life I've served. It sounds, I don't mean to be melodramatic. That's what I do, and I do best. And I think it's a calling that I have. And so now how do you do that beside your church and beside your family and beside, some degree, the community and my golfing buddies, all right? But this job, Clay Shakeschneider's position, and I'm sitting watching TV like everybody and hearing and seeing how this country, I would call it upside down, and night is day, day is night. Men are women, women are men. Kids are now adults. Crime victims are now persecuted, and criminals are now sometimes honored. All of those really, really, really crazy things that make you not want to recognize your country. I'm not running for president, but I just figured, okay, this is a bigger forum, at the state capitol to some extent. All right. And, maybe there's a way that I can be a part of holding the dike up and stopping the craziness, or at least stemming it, and being a part of maybe finding our roots again, maybe finding what the values that I think made America great. And I mean that. And to the point, when the United States Supreme Court ruled on it wasn't Roe Wade, but it ruled on the issue of the legalization of abortion. What they didn't outlaw abortion. They just decided that it's a state's issue. It's not a constitutional issue. So what did they do? They pushed the issue of abortion to the states. And so now it is up to the state legislators around the country to decide on issues of abortion. I suggest that this court may end up doing that on a lot of other things that are marginal constitutional issues, or maybe just morphed into that and were not even close to being constitutional issues. And if you think about abortion, where is it written, said, or decreed that it is a constitutional right? So I don't want to get on a tangent about pro-life, of which I am, but just the issue said, you know what? That might be another way that a teeny little vote in a teeny little district in a teeny little state like Louisiana, that maybe I could be part of that resistance. Yes.
Okay. So a lot of personal and conviction
Yes,
that you have about certain issues. So let's draw from the professional side as well. You're a former law enforcement officer, former sheriff. You have a daughter who is a judge. From the professional side of your life, how has that pushed you to run for this seat?
Well, I see how people can make a difference. Sometimes one man can make a difference, or one person. by the way, I have a second daughter who has an interesting and dynamic and important job working for the school system. She is a parent liaison for special ed kids.
Okay.
So another passionate service occupation, shall we say. So I've been shaped in those regards. I was shaped, in college when my first semester or second semester when the university said, you have to open a book, okay? And I was shaped when I said, okay, then it was 1970, so I joined the Marine Corps, and I was shaped when I went to boot camp and served in active duty of, okay, this is, if you don't learn discipline in that arena, then you're just not going to learn it. And then as a new deputy and all the other things that happen in a person's life. And I was shaped when I became a sheriff because there's not really a book. There's not an academy per se. So you kind of learn from the people who taught you, and you kind of learn from the people who continue teaching you, and about how important leadership is, and servant leadership more importantly, not the dogmatic, bombastic kind of that may work for some, not in a long term usually. So that's kind of where I was, and we created a culture in the sheriff's office that was successful, and I see a lot of that similarity, McHugh, because this is our neighboring parish, and that's what I'm proud to offer, because I'm no stranger to I think the culture and the people of Lower Livingston, and that they are God fearing and they are hardworking and they are family oriented and church going people, and not unlike what I grew up with in Gonzales and what I know that is going on in St. James as well. And so I'm thinking maybe that culture and that passion that I have in those areas, I think is a neat fit. And I'm not shy about leading. That this time, as I explained earlier, this is not a time for timid leadership in America, and I don't think it's this time for timid leadership in District 81. And there are a lot of things I think that demand attention in South Louisiana, in South Livingston, regarding issues that sometimes can be dealt with at the state level.
Sure. And as you mentioned, yes, a lot of similarities between Ascension and Livingston. Two of the fastest growing parishes in the state that has stayed pretty consistent for the last 20 years.
Yes.
And of course, as you said, you became sheriff sort of at the cusp of that in Ascension. It started here a few years later, but both sort of a sibling rivalry, almost you could call it.
Well, if it is, then Livingston would be the little brother. Just kidding. I've got to get some votes over here. That's just a kidding. Sure. That was for Sheriff Graves, former, and for Sheriff Ard, because we tease each other a lot. Yes.
Fair enough.
Yes.
Well, yeah, you got to have a little bit
good friends and great leaders. Yes.
So, as a sheriff, I'm sure you had interaction with both your local government and the state government. Tell us a little bit about that and how that sort of shaped your mindset as you try to run for this seat.
Well, if you go back to my college days, and my first dream was to be a teacher and a coach. Well, that's teamwork. And I don't see, quite frankly, long-term success in any endeavor, whether it's family, whether it's church, whether it's a neighborhood, whether it's a community, etc., without pieces of the puzzle working together. I did it as a sheriff with our parish governments, with our city governments, with our firefighters, with our neighborhood watches, our homeowners associations, team after team after team, coordinating all those. Team inside the sheriff's office, name them. You got a corrections team, you got a narcotics team, a patrol team, you got a detective team, you got a civil team. You got all of these moving parts that in some way every day have to mesh in some successful way, and you try to maintain a culture in that of cooperation, mutual respect, and keeping your eye on the ball. Whatever the commander's intent, I was taught in the military, was, okay, where is this leader trying to take us? All right.
Right.
And let us embrace that, but the clarity is so important on where you're trying to go with it. So here I am wanting to be the state representative. There will be, you should know this, it was a revelation to me. In Livingston Parish, there will be there's 4 state reps. All 4 will be freshmen based on a variety of circumstances. All right. And so obviously we're going to need each other, whether they were veterans or freshmen in there. I've met most of the aspirants, all right, and I've met some who were either running for senator or term limited and things like that. Uh, our legislative delegation in Ascension, I work with all the time. When I was a sheriff I was sheriff for 23 years. For I want to say 10 or 12 of those years, I was the legislative chairman of the Louisiana Sheriff's Association.
Okay.
So every year in the springtime for the regular sessions, we would file bills or follow bills that were near and dear to us. Sometimes, frankly, it was to kill bills, all right? Because there's a lot more bills killed up there than there are passed, and that may be a blessing for all your audience out there, because some are crazy, some are dangerous, and some are just plain wrong. Then there are others that are vitally important. So yes, I understood the need for just fundamentally for teamwork there, because you got to put together a patchwork of people, sometimes with different cultures, different territories, etc., to vote for a bill that you passionately believe in.
Sure. And a lot of differences among the folks in and around Livingston, not even just Livingston Parish,
Right.
but I always felt like Livingston is sort of a microcosm of the way the state is.
Mhm.
You know, you've got your Easterners, Southerners, Northerners, Westerners, you know, and everybody's got to kind of come together to work together,
Yes.
right? That idea of teamwork
Yeah.
that you threw out there. So, excuse me, you've had experience working with the legislature. It's always fun, legislators in legislature. But as you said, yes, here in Livingston, we are going to have Senator Rogers Pope is retiring, so we have two folks that are going to be vying so far. Obviously, qualifying's in August for his seat as senator. So your district 81, District 64, which is up in the Watson area, District 71, which is here in Denham, and District 95, which is over there on the eastern side of the parish, all going to have new faces. So teamwork is going to be imperative as we talk about what you would like to accomplish specifically if you are elected as a representative. What are those things, specifically with regard to Livingston?
Yes, I'll focus on what I think is what I'm hearing. And let me tell you, just know this, bears repeating. I live in Gonzales, Louisiana. I'm not going to sit here and preachify about what the basic needs of Maurepas are, or French Settlement, or Killian, or Springfield, or Port Vincent, or all those little hamlets in between. But I'll tell you this, I'm a good listener. And I've been doing this now for the last 3 months, focusing a large deal of my time in Livingston Parish, frankly, for two reasons. One, fundamentally, it's 51% of the district. So it's good politics to do it, I suppose you could argue. But secondly, it was the place that I'm least known. It was the place that I knew least about. All right. So even though I used to drive through, commuting back and forth to Hammond back before I-12, when I was going to college, I remember all those little stops along the way. So the things that I've been hearing are, and very quickly, it doesn't take long, that flood control, drainage issues are near and dear for obvious reasons. Now, I do know a great deal about that because we're not immune to that in the Sanamo area, which is downtown Sanamo is part of my district as well, if you will. And as a sheriff, and first responders, we know a lot about the challenges of response to that. All right. Well, I want to be on the other end of that now, even though the response obviously is vital, and I still would be doing that as well. But being on the team, if you will, and I hate to be redundant, but repetitive, but being on the team of decision makers on how we provide a plan and services, coordinating with your parish governments and your mayors and your community leaders. And yes, that's one thing. Now, I'm finding out along the way as I ramp up my knowledge of all this that there has been some really, I think, significant reform underway. And you mentioned Congressman Graves early when we were talking, who has been really responsive, and I mean much more than rhetoric. I mean real tangible federal dollars and real tangible plans about things that affect downstream impact areas like Lower Livingston. I will count the Amite River Basin Authority as one that was restructured, and I think put a better broad base of decision makers on this board. And I think there's what is it, validation of that board, like empowerment, that there's a high expectation of this board being more than a meet and greet, more than you know planning and planning and planning, but planning and doing. Okay,
Right.
And there's money, certainly not on a tree, but there's money, there's fundings out there. The Comeet River diversion, I think, is going to happen. All right. Now, if you'd have told me about that 3 months ago, I'd have said, yeah, I read about it. Well, it's a pretty innovative thing up north of us, and it's going to route high water, to the Mississippi River. That's first grade uh, simplicity, right?
But it works.
But that relieves a lot of the hydrology coming down our way. There's some other things that are happening. A Maurepas revitalization, all right, and diverting fresh water into Maurepas Swamp, all right. I'm understanding that's close to happening. What does that do? Well, besides the natural habitat, and for all your outdoorsmen and the native beauty of South Louisiana, it will rebuild the fauna, the vegetation, hence retard some the power surge. Excuse me. I say the water surge.
The storm surge.
Storm surge. Yes. Okay. As things go. Am I good right here?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah. Excuse me, Mike. Right. Anyway, so those are the kind of things I think are exciting. I think it's a good time to be part of that team, and I will be there, and I'll be a good listener, but I won't be shy.
No.
Right.
And clearly you're excited. For those who are
Yeah.
just listening, Mr. Wiley just took out his mic for a second,
Yeah.
gesticulating here.
Yeah. I'm half Italian somewhere. I'm not sure.
But there
Okay?
you go.
Right.
Speaking with your hands.
Yeah.
So obviously you've spoken a lot about teamwork, learning. Obviously you've come over here to learn a lot,
Yeah.
which says a lot about what you're trying to do. Let's, as we try to sort of wrap up here, let's talk about going back to you for a second. You've brought up things like church, family. Tell us a little bit about you personally, to sort of wrap this up. Like, where do you go to church? Who's list off your family? I know from your campaign products, you have a big family.
Well, I do, and you and I talked off about your lifeline and how you ended up in the business you're in, and we are who we are because of who brought us into this world in large measure. Yes, I'm a Christian. I'm a believer. 7th grade, I went steady with a lady named Linda, who is now Linda Wiley. In 50 years in July, we will have been married.
Oh, congratulations.
Yes, and she's a retired flight attendant. So for many of those years, 2 nights a week, she was working off, and so I was Mr. Mom with our 2 daughters, which made me be a better dad, I suppose. And I made some of the dancing recitals. I made some of the 9-week report card stuff that Linda couldn't make. All right, she made many of them, more than me, but those kinds of things. And thankfully, I had an older daughter that would help her dad out, okay, when she was like 9, okay, and
Sure.
doing those things. But it shaped me, okay, and frankly, we have a special granddaughter, a Down syndrome baby who God gifted us with. She's 14 last month. So about 15 years ago, on or about, we found out that she was going to be born with a birth defect, a heart defect, which is consistent with the Down syndrome, and that we just weren't sure if she was, was going to come out of it. Okay, this is during the pregnancy. All right, this is my daughter, the judge, her youngest daughter. She has 3 daughters. And I will tell you, life gives you those interruptions and those challenges. And it was at that point that Lynn and I both rededicated ourselves to a higher power. And we got on our knees and we prayed and we prayed and we prayed. And we still are practicing churchgoers and saved Christians. And proud to proclaim that. We go to Healing Place Church on Highland Road. All right. Our pastor is Mike Heyman, love him to death. And that's kind of the story about our family. We have 5 grandchildren. One's a sophomore in college, who is a sorority light bulb. Okay.
Sure.
And we love. I mean, anyway, I have 2 seniors, one grandson, and Abby, who's goes to St. Michael. Scotty goes to Dutchtown. He's a baseball player. Her and her little sister, my other granddaughter, are soccer players. And so when I mentioned, my dormant years, well, I watched so much soccer, McHugh, that I started liking it.
Right.
Okay. And yeah, and they were really, really, really good. That's kind of the personal side of me. I'm a middle child, older brother, older sister, younger brother, younger sister. I found out my mom and dad were both middle children, so I kind of think maybe at least maybe now some might say I need a full-time psychiatrist next to me. All right, because I'm starved for attention. This is what you get.
Sure.
And what you will get, in summary, if it's time for that, what you will get if you will consider voting for me, your listeners and your viewers, as you will not get somebody you will always agree with. I don't suppose you will get somebody who will always tell you the truth. All of my documents have my cell phone number on it. All right, cell phone. All right, as well as email and what have you. Okay, so I won't be hard to find for you to express your adoration or your aggravation. Okay, I just made that up, by the way. All right, and
you're full of them.
Yeah, so I will be there. My professional life is an open book. 6 terms as an elected sheriff, and before that, as someone learning how to be a leader and a successful sheriff in my formative years. I was very active in the Sheriff's Association, very active statewide in that regard. So I'm not a real secret about my culture, my background, and my strengths and my weaknesses. I would love to carry that to the state capitol and be a part of the good things in Louisiana.
And I think that's as good a place to wrap up as any if you'll reintroduce yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yes, my name is Jeff Wiley. I am a candidate for District 81 State Representative. It represents a little bit of St. James Parish, a little bit more of the greater Santa Monica-Sorrento, AC area in Ascension, and then what I now know and clearly is Lower Livingston, which is Port Vincent, which is French Settlement, which is Killian, Maurepas, Springfield, and everything in between. I look forward to serving those people.
Well, thank you, sir, and good luck on the campaign trail. Perhaps we'll see you again.
Well, you made it very easy. Thank you.
Yes, sir. We try to.
Yes, sir.
Here, and we still got about 6 months to qualifying, so
Yes.
still plenty of time to reconnect.
Yes.
My name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. Appreciate you guys out there for joining us for this show with Mr. Wiley here, who, of course, as he mentioned, is going to be running for District 81. Please remember the news is on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. We are once a week in print on Thursdays at $7 a month to get that in your mailbox. We're also online, www.livingstonparishnews.com. We always appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you next time.